Hi everyone. So we are doing a vlog style, kind of a project style vlog, if you will, for this weaving project that I have. So I do want to say from the beginning that all this yarn is sponsored. It was sent to me very kindly by Purl Soho. Thank you very much, Purl Soho, for sponsoring this project with this yarn. Additionally, if you want to make this similar project, I will link in the description box below the link to the free pattern tutorial, as well as an affiliate link if you choose to buy the line weight yarn, which is what I'm using. So let's dive in. So I'm going to show you all the things I'm going to use. And also I apologize, the audio might be in and the quality might be in and out because I got a little excited. I forgot to clip on my microphone, but we are going, so we're just going to go with it. So what happened was, so Purl Soho has this tutorial on, like a pattern tutorial on their blog that is for a woven plaid scarf. If you have been following along with my regular podcast, you may know that I started weaving very recently. All I've made so far are just plain, well not plain, but just woven scarves where the weft is hand spun and the warp is just yarn from stash. So I decided, let's start getting a little bit more complicated. Let's have different colors. And this tutorial pattern from Purl Soho, they lay out very nicely on exactly how to warp your loom and what colors to use and that kind of thing. So it's a really nice introduction for someone who's new to making like plaid for me. So I have decided, so in the tutorial itself, there is a spot where it says that with the yarn that you purchase, they recommend buying 3 skeins of the main color and then 1 skein each of your 4 contrast colors. And they said with these 7 skeins of yarn, you should be able to get 3 scarves out of them. It doesn't tell you how, but they say like if you mix and match the contrast and the MCs and use different colors, everything, you can get 3 scarves out of these 7 skeins of yarn. So that's my mission, is to get 3 different scarves out of 7 skeins of yarn, and I'm doing this twice. Okay, so let me show you. So for the first set of 3, my main color is this beautiful off-white. This colorway is heirloom white. And again, this is on line weight, which is a single ply 100% merino wool from Purl Soho. It is fingering weight. It's 494 yards for 100 grams. Yeah. You can see, yeah, single ply. So this is my main color for the first 3. And the contrasts I chose are these. So here we've got Crocus Bud, which is this slightly variegated. You can see some variegation in there in the ply, or not the ply because it is a single ply, but just in the marl of the yarn. And then here we have this lighter purple, which is called Lilac Fog. Next then, we have Clear Sky. And the last color is this beautiful bright flamingo. Look how bright that is. Yeah. So that is what I am using as my contrast. So let me hold them all up together. Yeah. So what I'm planning to do is that for the first scarf, I'm going to do it exactly to the pattern. I'm going to follow the pattern exactly, and then for our scarves 2 and 3, we will go from there and see what we've got. So I'm going to try to be very precise, and I'm not usually a very precise person, but I'm going to weigh my yarn beforehand, if I remember, and I'm going to figure out like what yardage I have left over so that I can plan out my other 2 scarves to maximize my yardage as much as I can. So we will see. So this is for the first set of 3. The second set of 3 is a much different palette. So the second set of 3, the main color is going to be Fieldstone Gray, which is this slightly heathery gray. And then my contrast colors for that will be Clover Green, this very bright green. Then Night Blue, this deep navy heather color. Red Plum, And then soft black. Yeah. So yeah, you can see very different color palettes and feels to them, though they both have a pop of brightness. So with this one, that pop of brightness comes from the green. So yeah, I'm excited just to see how it comes out. And yeah, so I hope, well, you will follow along. I mean, I guess you could just stop watching because I'm just going to be filming this all throughout and I'll compile it into one large video. Yeah, so soon I will get to warping my loom. I'm waiting for a few extra things to come in just to simplify my warping process more. If you watch one of my episodes previous, I think it's episode 64, so it has a thing about, you know, a warping mishap in there. But I'm waiting for a rattle to come in, which a rattle, if you don't know, is like a warping peg, but it's like a bunch of warping pegs on one strip of wood so that you can warp with more evenness between like the ends of the ends of your warps, versus it kind of coming into a triangle with one warping peg. And then I also ordered a few dowels. I was kind of lazy. I could have just gone to Home Depot and just gotten it, but then I had to sand it myself. I just don't want to deal with it. So I just ordered some dowels off Amazon to come so that they can help with my tensioning for when I wind my warp, so that hopefully I don't need other little hands to help me, so that I can get some even tensioning on there when I wind it up. So hopefully in a few days we'll be able to get started. All right. Hey guys, so I am getting ready to warp the loom now, but first I've got to figure out where the middle of my heddle is so that I can string everything evenly. So here is my heddle. I have here a 12 WPI one, I believe. I forget, what is the terminology even? A 12 dent, yes, that's the correct term. 12 dent, which is for like fingering weight yarn. So I've got to figure out the middle because the scarf itself will not be as wide as the entire dent. So I've got to figure out where the middle of it is. So we're going to do some counting and we will get to it. All right, so I figured out my middle here, which I've marked here with a pencil, just so I always know it. It is an uneven number of dents, so I am marking kind of like the center of it. And then from there, I'll count out towards each side the number I need, and so then I'll know where to start from when I start stringing my threads. And here you can see I have a very unprofessional setup for the rattle that I got. So this rattle is for a different loom company, but I'm just kind of going with it. So I thought it would come with like a wider base. It does not. As you can see here, it's just this plank of wood. So I had these clamps from my loom kit used to clamp down the loom, but as you'll see over here, I have it set up on its stand, so I don't think it'll move that much. I measured out with a tape measure the length I needed, and as you can tell, this is my kids' playroom area. It's very messy. Anyway, so I clamped it up so it'll stay here, and so then hopefully I can string back and forth, and hopefully it'll be smoother sailing this time. We'll see. Hey everyone, so I have since warped my loom, and I've run into a few maybe technical difficulties. I don't know. They could be very well because of user error, but I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So here is my loom, and as you can see, I've woven several inches already, and you can see in the difference here in the density that I figured out finally how to more densely kind of pack my threads, for lack of better terms, I guess. My selvage edges are a little bit untidy because also, again, there was a learning curve. We're trying to figure out exactly how to weave with a finer yarn, because I've only woven DK weight since. This is my first like fingering weight, and this is maybe even a light fingering, I would say, because it's like close to 500 yards per skein. So as you can see here, you can see that my warping thread has become very fuzzy. This is mostly, I think, due to the single ply nature of the yarn. It's a single ply merino. Single ply is more prone to pilling, and you can see here the threads have definitely pilled, and I think it's just from the friction of passing through the heddle, because if you look on the other side, those are perfectly fine. So yeah, and so then the pilling here has kind of made the threads stick to each other. Like if you can see from here, my warp shed is not very clean. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let's see. Let me see if I can give you a better view. All right, so you can see here, here's my warp shed. It should be a straight shot through, but you can see there's like threads that in the middle that aren't quite settling down to where they should be. And that is just kind of annoying because it means that after every single row I weave, I have to go through with my hands and make sure that threads are going where they should be, or else I end up with floats. As you can see, like here, here, here. I'm just letting them be because you know what? It's hand woven. There's going to be some imperfection. To me, that is sort of the joy behind a hand woven, handmade item, is that it's not going to be machine perfect. Of course, I personally as a perfectionist still strive for perfection, but I'm acknowledging that everything cannot be perfect. Anyway, so yeah, this is going beautifully. I am slowly learning kind of how to adjust how I'm moving my heddle and everything to make my weaving more consistent and just tighter. Yeah, and I'm still troubleshooting these threads. I've looked up some videos. Some people suggested like scrubbing the threads. Someone suggested like using like misting them to make them wet. I guess to get the pilling hairiness to settle in. It didn't really make much of a difference. I am just going with the flow and just kind of letting it be. I'm gonna see if anything I can change with how I warp the second scarf will change anything. Not entirely optimistic because it does seem to be just the yarn pilling from the constant friction with the heddle. And there might not be much I can do about that. Hey everyone. All right, so quick update to wrap up this video, this portion of the weaving. Ignore all the mess behind me. I finished the first scarf. This in total, from the day I warped it until the day that I bound it off the loom, took just about, I'm looking at my calendar, a week. So I warped it on a Saturday, so a little bit over a week. I warped on a Saturday and I cut it off the loom, which was yesterday, on a Monday, like a whole week after. Yeah, so for fingering weight woven scarf, I think not bad. I don't really have much experience with how long it should take, but I will say I probably work consistently at least half an hour every day. Some days a little longer than half an hour, maybe an hour and a half total. Just kind of was taking time, different chunks of time to sit down in the loom, and I get back up, go do something else, or you know, in between doing things with the kids, that kind of thing. I find that really easy to do, to just sit down and take chunks of time to work on it. So a few things to talk about. I mentioned in one of the sections earlier about how the single ply merino was very sticky. It was, and honestly I did struggle a little bit with this yarn. I'm gonna see as I make the other scarves if I can troubleshoot it a little better. One thing I noticed that made the stickiness better was increasing my tension. But with increasing my tension, some of my warp threads, especially the ones on the selvages, started to stretch thin, and some of them actually broke. So there's a part in the scarf where I think 2 of the selvages broke off, and I just kept going on. And then I ended up binding off my scarf probably several inches before I intended to, because one of the warp threads in the middle broke. So yeah, it kind of is what it is. I suspect it broke just because from the constant friction of the heddle going back and forth, it probably just wore down on the single ply yarn. So we'll see. So here it is. So if I take it, you can see it's a pretty nice long length. Yeah, and it's definitely long enough to loop around and wear. So I'm really happy with the length, even though I had to bind it off a few inches early. And there are a few things, I'm going to look at my notes because I wrote down a few things that I kind of learned from this process, things that I want to improve on for the next ones. Where are they? Okay. And the other thing I've realized as I kept going, and I'm going to look for a section to see if I can show you, but do you see how in this section here, there's a little bit, I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but can you see how there's some floats? It's because after some time I realized that I was going sideways, so instead of my heddle coming down straight, it was coming down like this. And I realized after some research that my dominant hand, which is my left hand, this side, it has more force when it pulls down because it's dominant. And so then it was compacting my threads more than my right side. So I was ending up slowly over time with like this 1/2 inch tilt. So I wove just through that 1/2 inch to correct it. And then I looked up online, some people said that instead of having your hands equally on the ends of the heddle, try putting your dominant hand closer to the middle so that that force is more evenly distributed. So I started doing that. That really fixed it, and that worked pretty well actually. So just a tip for you, if you find that as you are weaving that your heddle is kind of coming down and starting to tilt as you're beating down your threads, that might be a good fix for you. Yeah, so that was the main thing. Like, yeah, I don't know if you can see that right here where I try to fix that right there. Yeah, but overall, yeah, so I wove this exactly to pattern basically. It was like 5 inches of MC, the white, and then a line, either one line or 2 lines of a CC, and they alternated like that. Yeah, my selvage ends you can see are not the tidiest, but they are not bad. Like this is where I had some of those, you know, the threads coming off, the selvage threads snapping off and that kind of thing. I haven't washed this yet, so I imagine when it washes up, it'll just kind of soften out even more and kind of just come together more. So yeah, so I am going to set up for my second warp soon. I'm going to actually take a pause from this project, work on a different project, and I think it will just be all my weaving stuff I will try to put into separate videos so that people who aren't as interested in weaving can not watch those videos. And if you're interested in weaving, you can refer to those directly, especially because I'm going to start to try new techniques, try different styles, and try to figure out warp and weft and yardages and that kind of thing. So stay tuned. Yeah, but I'm really excited for this experiment to go. I'm really excited to keep learning how to weave with single ply and not have my warp threads break and not have them be too sticky, and we will figure it out. So yeah, all right, see you in the next one. Okay, so just to round things up, I wanted to give some updated yardages since, you know, we're trying to be precise, right? We're trying to be exact about this whole weaving project thing. So let me pull up my notes so I can tell you what those numbers are. So what I did was I weighed my yarn before I warped my loom, I weighed it after I warped my loom, and I weighed it after I was done with the whole project. So I could see at different stages how much of each color I used, which like may or may not be useful. At least I know how much I have left, but I realized as I was starting to plan out the second scarf that it may not be super helpful, especially because I'm not going to follow the pattern exactly with how all the stripes are laid out. It's going to have to be different just because of the yardages of everything. So anyway, so what I did was, so then I'm going to go through color by color, okay? So for the first scarf, which the main color was heirloom white, I'm just going to wear it and drape over my shoulders so you can have a visual when I go over this. Looks kind of like a toga. Okay, so heirloom white, the main white. What I had left at the end, so I used 82 grams for the warp and 124 grams for the weft, which is again the going back and forth, which makes sense. There's a lot more going back and forth than there is like lengthwise. I think I probably used less of weft than the pattern did because again I had to cut it off a few inches early, and this is basically like one whole skein. And I started with 3 skeins. They clearly expect you to get into the 3rd skein at some point too. So yeah, so I probably use a little less than the pattern originally does. For Bright Flamingo, which was the CC that I used the most in the scarf because it had every other stripe was Bright Flamingo and it went across my weft twice. I used, apparently I only did the math for the MC, so yeah, I get to do math on the spot here. Oh, I used like 3 grams, that's why I didn't do that. I used 3 grams of this. For my other 3, I used basically, let's see, so this is Lilac Fog. I used like a gram of Lilac Fog. I used 1 gram of Crocus Bud, and I used 2 grams of Clear Sky, this blue. So yeah, so if you're following this pattern to the
specifications, you'll basically just need 2 or 3 grams of your contrast colors because they're just used very little throughout the entire scarf. Yeah, and then you'll obviously use the most out of your main color. So going forward for the next scarf, I'm just going to give you a little bit of what I'm thinking, and then in the next video I will probably go through the planning of the second scarf with you, which I have already started. What I'm thinking I'll have to do, because I use basically like close to 200 grams of the contrast for the main color for the entire scarf. I do not have 200 grams in any of my other contrast colors. So my next 2 scarves will have to have the warp be a mixture of 2 or 3 of the different contrast colors. And then, it'll just have more color in there. Instead of like one whole color with some stripes, it'll be much more vibrant, much more colorful, because it'll have to be that way to get all the yardage I need out of all the remaining skeins. Yeah. So that's what it is, and that's how it'll go. I do have to do some more math, which hopefully the next video I will go into breaking down how I'm doing that, because I also still do not know how I'm doing that. And we will see, and we will go on this adventure together. Yeah. Anyway, let me know what you think below. Let me know if you have any tips for figuring out yardage-wise what I might need beforehand. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing the chaos and the misadventures so far. And stay tuned for the next one.